In the recent ESO Developer AMA, there was a lot of good questions, but the very first question that was asked was one that really interested me because I understand exactly what they meant. The question was, did they have any plans to go back and redo anything in any of these zones to make players want to visit them? That the zones just feel empty. And of course, we have a lot of events going on inside of zones, dolmens, horror storms, all that kind of stuff that have been added to these new zones over the years. But I have been doing things like surveys or whatever in areas where you can tell no one has just been there probably all day, but just a handful of people here or there. Nobody really visits older zones. Most players stay in the newer zones. So a zone that's come out in the last couple of years, that's pretty much where everyone's going to be, or the newest zone that's out, that particular year. And that's kind of how it's always gone. And you have some really good things going on. I know dolmens have been around since the beginning, but horror storms were a really good example that this individual gave. And that was something when they first were introduced, that zone was first introduced, those were always, something going on. There's always people there. You could just ride around and just go from one to the other. Now, kind of like the dragons as well. You can go find dragons sometimes on console, at least for me, and sometimes you can go and there'll only be one or two people there. So I find it kind of strange that these areas are just kind of desolate. And their suggestion, of course, was adding some type of event or something to, draw players there. And the devs had a very good response, in my opinion. They've talked about that exact point. They have many areas in the game that they're wanting to encourage and incentivize players to revisit. Now, in true ZOS fashion, unfortunately, they didn't give us any detail of when they plan on changing this or what they're planning on doing, so we'll kind of have to wait and see. But this, in my opinion, was a very good question because I have felt like this for a really long time. That once you get away from maybe playing the base story and you move on to DLCs and things like that, even when the game was first introduced, before we had any other areas, of course, once you completed the story, all players were in Craglorn. That was the in-game area. And then once DLC started getting added in, even Craglorn didn't have that many players unless you were people looking for maybe a trial or something like that. And then all of the base zone areas just pretty much were obsolete. Nobody was there. And that's happened kind of as the years go on, even for DLC zones. You're not going to Murkmire right now and finding a crowd of people there like you did when Murkmire was introduced into the game, just because there's so many other zones being added year after year since Murkmire. I do think there is many ways they could incentivize players. This person recommended, of course, doing certain events there. I think that would be a great idea. I also think maybe, if it's a base zone and it's a dolmen or, wherever you're at, and there's a little, event going on in that zone like we have, maybe change up the drops for this. Instead of it being some of the gear, because we all know most of the gear in game that's dropping in overland stuff is not really worth having. You're just going to break it down. What if you started dropping things like motif pages, or what if you started dropping things like different materials you could use, whether it be wax or wood or something like that? Just something to incentivize players to actually go and participate in that particular thing when it's going on for whatever time frame you want to set that in. And you can do that in every zone in the game at different times. And I think that would be a great way, kind of as they suggested, to improve the game. I'm not sure exactly what their plan is. Just having better rewards to me would really incentivize players. I don't know exactly how far they want to push the rewards of what you could get. Maybe if you had, your endeavors, what you get every day for your endeavors. A lot of people gripe that they don't really get enough. It takes too long to even be able to purchase anything with them because it takes almost a year to be able to get 16,000. So that's kind of crazy. What if you had endeavors dropping in these, chests periodically around the map, or from the nodes, or maybe from completing a horror storm or a dolmen or whatever for whatever area you're in? What if you had just random reward drops, maybe crown crates? Oh, that would be a great idea. In my opinion, I don't know how well they would like that, but you go up and you complete a dolmen and there's a crown crate in the chest when you open it up. It might only be one. It might be a crown crate from any year, but it's just something that's a random reward that people might enjoy. I don't know if they would ever go for that. I don't know if that would be a thing that they would like to do, but I think if they really want players to revisit these zones like they're saying, they're going to have to do something besides just improve the visuals. I think the visual improvement for the base original zones was a great thing, and they're probably going to do that with some of the other older zones as well. But you really need a way to incentivize players to go back and visit these areas, because it's just very strange to me to go to some of these areas unless there's an event going on or you have a survey or something like that, a treasure map. You're not really ever going to these areas. There's a lot of areas that I hardly ever visit anymore, unless there's something that I have to do there. I'm not going there just to fight world bosses. I'm not going there just to, complete the event that's going on there. I'm going there for a single purpose, and then I'm going on to the next thing. And I think that definitely needs to be looked at by the development team. Leave me a comment. What would you like to see changed in these older base zones that would incentivize you to revisit them? Leave me a comment with your thoughts, and I'll catch you all next time. Peace.